Good morning, Year 6. So last week we looked at writing our narrative about the war, and we could have chosen maybe being evacuated during the war, or maybe being at the time where the Blitz happened and being involved in the Blitz bombing. And I gave you some video clips to look at if you needed, and some sentence starters. And I also gave you a short story. Now we're going to still look at that short story, but I'm going to ask or show you how to build tension in your narrative writing. So that means to keep the reader thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Something's coming. Maybe they're starting to feel scared. Maybe they're starting to feel excited. They want to read on. Okay, so making it seem like something's building up, like some problem is coming. That's what we mean when we say building tension. So the first short story is called The Day My Life Changed Forever. It was Sunday, the day after my 11th birthday. The year was 1939 and war against Hitler had just begun. However, this wasn't just any old Sunday. As I lay in my comfy bed, dreaming about playing football in the cobbled streets just outside my house, I remembered this was evacuation day. Tears streamed down the sides of my pale cheeks like a waterfall. Shutting my eyes, I tried to fall back into a deep slumber. No luck. I could hear Mother shouting up to me, "Are you awake yet, Tom? Don't forget to put on your best Sunday suit." "I don't want to," I cried, pulling the covers over my scrunched up face. To tell you the truth, I was petrified of leaving Mother. You see, that week during a night raid, a bakery just a few streets away was bombed by V-5 German bomber planes, which killed the Hollyman family. I kept contemplating, what if that happened to Mother? What if I wasn't there to protect her? Dad was about to be sent to war, so Mother would be all alone. Reluctantly, I dragged myself out of my bed, wondering whether I will ever get to sleep in it again. Looking solemnly out of the window, I was suddenly reminded of the danger we were in. Demolished and destroyed buildings lined the pavements. I turned to look at my little sister Rose, who was still sleeping like an angel, far from what she was really like. Trouble, that's what my dad used to say. It was then I realised I had to go. It was my duty to look after Rose, and she was not safe here in the city. So before I read the next page, I just want to highlight some things to you, Year 6. So we've got some parentheses here in our brackets, okay? As I lay in my comfy bed, we've got a clause here, okay? We've got a fronted adverbial here, reluctantly. We've got some speech here. We have like a waterfall. We've got a simile over here. Okay, these are all things you should be picking up on and trying to mimic when you're doing your piece of writing. So even when we're reading these stories, that's what we need to look at. We've got a lot of varied sentence structures in here. Trouble, just a one-word sentence. Fabulous. Okay, let's read the next part. A few hours later, we hurried to the train station. Rose wore her best Sunday dress, soft and silky pink with a bow in the middle, and I wore my navy blazer along with a cap. Small cardboard boxes containing our gas masks hung from our shoulders, and attached to our coats were large labels, which had our name, age, and school written on. In our hands, we held a square brown suitcase, which carried our clothes and favourite toy. Mother held our hands tight as we stood amongst hundreds of other children, teachers and parents. I had never seen Mother so upset before. Her crimson red lips quivered and her body was shaking. Trying to look as brave as she could, she gave us both our last hug and kiss goodbye and whispered softly, "You are a brave boy, Tom. Look after your sister for me. I love you and I will see you very soon." "I promise," I relied as I hugged her tightly. It all happened so quickly. Within minutes, we were led onto the crowded train by officials in long black coats. Suddenly, the train doors slammed shut. Like a bolt of lightning, silence struck the train, followed by the deafening screams and cries of terrified and nervous children. Although my stomach was churning like a wheel, I kept strong and didn't shed a tear, as I didn't want to frighten Rose, whose blue, shiny eyes glared at me. Staring out of the steamed-up windows, I could see Mother's hugging in floods of tears. My eyes darted around the platform, hoping to catch a final goodbye from Mother, but I failed to see her. Again, Year 6, let's just go over some of this amazing vocabulary here. We have like a bolt of lightning, another simile here. Okay, silence struck. We've got some good alliteration here as well. Deafening screams. Okay, we've got stomach was churning back like a wheel. We've got a relative clause in here. whose blue, shiny eyes glared at me. I kept strong and didn't shed a tear, as I didn't want to frighten Rose. Okay, and then we've got the clause here. We've still got some speech, direct speech, but remember, it only moves the story on. If it doesn't serve that purpose of giving us more information or telling the story a bit further, it doesn't need to be in. Soon the train rumbled and puffed out of the station, steaming through luscious lime-green fields where cows and sheep were peacefully grazing. Tremendous tall trees swayed in the wind, their branches waving goodbye as we got deeper and deeper into the countryside. Clear blue streams trickled down enormous hills like the tears I wanted to cry. It was a long journey, and soon Rose was fast asleep, her head gently resting on my shoulder. After a few hours, the rusty train arrived at a strangely named place called Landrindod. Rose could read, but she couldn't read this word. Everyone was tired, hot, and miserable. Here we marched into a nearby school with a silver gate and grey bricks. We were made to stand in rows like smartly dressed soldiers. My heart raced as a group of adults collected children one by one. Was I going to be split up from my sister? Even though she was annoying, that would be like losing an arm or leg. How could I protect her? How could I keep my promise? 5 minutes felt like 5 hours as slowly the crowd of anxious children dispersed. To my surprise, a lady in a bright blue coat and hat stretched out her arm to shake my hand, and in a soft voice she said, "Hello, Tom. Hello, Rose. I'm Mrs. Williams, and you will be coming with me." "Both of us?" I asked wearily. "Yes, it is going to be a bit of a squeeze. You will have to share a room, and of course there will be chores to do. Now, are we ready to go?" So we've got some lovely vocabulary here, year 6. We've got dispersed here. We've got some questions as well, some of his own personal thoughts that he's worried about in his head. We're getting to know. We've got a 3 here, a tired, hot, and miserable. Okay. We've got peacefully grazing, some really lovely vocabulary in here you could magpie. Suddenly, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew we were going to be safe. Mrs. Williams was a short lady with bouncy brown curly hair, just like Mother's. Walking hand in hand through the quiet village, Mrs. Williams told us how her husband was serving in the army and that she now lived alone. She told us how she had always wanted children. Eventually, we arrived at a dainty cottage with a straw roof. Inside, a glowing amber fire lit up the room with dancing golden flames. Also in the room sat a tin bath and a wooden table and chairs. Mrs. Williams insisted that we both had a bath. Later on, I asked if I could write a letter to Mother, and Mrs. Williams helped me. Although I felt safe, I couldn't help but miss Mother incredibly. At the time, I remember thinking that this was one of the hardest days of my life. Little did I know it was about to get much harder. So can you see there, they've ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. So you could think about your ending. Is it going to be a cliffhanger? Are you going to leave people in suspense? Okay. Are you going to end it where they've just evacuated? Are you going to end it where a bomb's just dropped on the house, like when we've been looking at the Blitz? Okay. This is your decision. Okay, so now that we've read that story again and we've highlighted some of the important language again, we're just going to look at different ways that you could build tension, okay? And then I will take you through your task for today and then your task for tomorrow as well, because they will link, okay? So there won't be a separate video for tomorrow. We'll go through it all today. So there's different ways that you can build tension in your story. So the first one is to make that problem or issue harder to solve. Remember in your narrative planning, you looked at a story mountain and there was a climax, there was a problem, and then there was a resolution. It's making that problem really tough. So this is a great opportunity in your narrative. This problem is really tough. The Blitz is happening. There's bombs dropping. There's gas being dispensed everywhere. Your family you could get a letter to say that your family have died, but you're on the way home to them. So what are you going to do? You've got no house. Okay, it's very very easy in our narrative to make our problem sound worse, because we've got there's a war. It can't really get much worse. Okay. And then you can make it unlikely for your hero or your person to succeed. So if the children are running away from their home, maybe they're lost. Okay, maybe there's bad weather coming as well. Maybe they hear the bombs coming overhead. Maybe that area is about to get bombed. So there's 3 things that are against them: the weather, the fact they're going to get bombed and they don't know where they are. How are they going to get home? It sounds very unlikely. Okay, or again, you could have the two characters arguing. Maybe the person that they're staying with isn't very nice and they start an argument. Maybe brother and sister split up if you've got a brother and sister. Okay, maybe they go their separate ways. Again, that would make it really unlikely that they're gonna find their own way back. Maybe they both get lost. Maybe then a bomb drops and separates them. They can't get back to each other. So what are they going to do? Okay, and again, another one is using the senses. Now you can see on the poster that it says using the senses twice, but you can use sight, sound, taste, touch and smell to describe what's around you, but also what the characters experience and what do they feel in the pit of the stomach, what can they touch, what can they taste, but also what do they see from their point of view as well, like when they're walking. So it's not, but when there's a problem you could look at the characters' experiences. If there's a bomb coming off, what does it look like to them, what does it taste like to them, what does it feel like, okay, what does it smell like, what can they hear. But when you're using your senses to describe your environment, maybe they're just walking into a bomb zone. What does that environment look like? What does it smell like? What can they hear in that environment? Okay, so there's two separate things. And again, you cannot give some details. So we saw at the end of that story that we read that he thought that the evacuation day, actually leaving his family, would be the hardest day. And then we've just got that little snippet of information before we finish that says little did he know it was about to get harder. So straight away that builds tension. That reader's thinking, oh, something really bad's coming, I'm going to read on and I'm going to think. Okay, so maybe once we finish this, your task will be to add an extra bit, to add an extra paragraph, trying to build that tension up. So they've started there with little did they know it was going to be harder. Can you then carry that on and build that tension? What was going to be harder? Is as a bomb dropped? Has he found out that they've lost the parents? Is the train stopped? Okay, what's happened? Okay, use short, sharp sentences to create dramatic impact. So I know on Monday we talked about colons and semicolons. They're not appropriate here. We don't really want to lengthen those sentences and to make them thorough. We want short, sharp sentences, sometimes even a word. Okay, something like frozen or something like terror. That can be one word, can be that sentence in this case to build that up. Okay, and again, looking for more appropriate synonyms. Stop and read through your work and think, actually, I use that quite a lot. Is there something else I can look up? You've got the internet, guys. You've got a thesaurus on your internet to look up as well. And you can also right click a Word document and ask for synonyms. Okay, if you click on the word, highlight it, and then right click, and then down the side there's a synonyms, and you can also look for synonyms that way as well. And again, we've got our similes and metaphors to create that picture. Now this story was really good at that, building up a really good mental image throughout. Can you do that to carry it on in your next paragraph? So your task for today is to do to continue. I want another paragraph, again seeing if we can build the tension using some of these techniques. Maybe even underneath you could tell me some of the techniques you've used, or you could highlight the writing like I have done on the video. And then you also have another sheet to complete as well. And then tomorrow what I want you to do is look at your own writing that you wrote last week. Okay, so if you haven't wrote anything last week, you're going to find this really hard, and maybe you could go and use a different World War II story that we looked at last week. It'll still be in your resources section, your assignment. But looking at that, filling out that chart, have you built tension? How can I improve on it? And then trying to rewrite, not necessarily all of it, but rewriting 1 or 2 paragraphs to try and build that tension in a story that you don't have tension all the way through. So maybe you want that tension in the middle, maybe you want the tension at the end, or maybe you want to start straight away with that tension. So you don't need to rewrite all of it. You need to pick a section where you think, actually, I needed to build a bit more there. I needed to make the reader think, oh, something bad's coming. Okay, and then you need to rewrite that, okay, as well as the sheets that are on your assignment as well. Okay, well done, year 6, keep going.